They say the painting began as a dream the artist could not escape, a dream of a face rising slowly from still water in the dead of night, as if a memory long buried had finally found its way back to the surface. The figure did not speak. It simply watched, patient and silent, half hidden beneath the dark. When the artist awoke, the feeling lingered like a presence in the room, a gaze that followed from a place he could not name. And so the painting was born, not as an invention, but as a return, a face from somewhere between the past and the unconscious, resurfacing quietly, refusing to disappear. The canvas opens into darkness, a darkness that does not threaten, yet does not comfort. The water lies still and silent, deep and endless, reflecting only the faintest light from above. It feels less like a landscape and more like a boundary, a thin dividing line between two worlds that rarely meet. From beneath that surface, the face begins to rise, slow, measured, almost weightless, as though it has traveled a great distance through silence to arrive at this fragile point of emergence. The eyes rest just above the waterline, calm and piercing at the same time. They observe gently, without accusation, without fear, without urgency. A gaze that feels ancient, as if it has watched countless years pass from beneath the depths. The red hood frames the face like a memory preserved in ritual, a fragment of identity wrapped in time. Its color glows softly against the shadows, neither bright nor fading, but suspended in its own quiet endurance. Behind the figure stand three tall cypress trees, rising upward like sentinels, guarding a secret no voice dares to speak aloud. Their forms are slender, solemn, unwavering. They do not sway, they do not breathe. They exist like pillars of memory, witnesses to whatever has come before and whatever still waits beneath the water. Together, they create an intimate space around the emerging face, a hidden clearing, a private threshold between presence and disappearance. The reflection on the water repeats the face below, softened, broken slightly by the thin ripple of light. It does not mirror perfectly. It trembles, as though the identity beneath the surface is fragile, fragmented, and uncertain. Two versions of the same self exist in the same moment, one seen, one submerged, and neither fully belongs to the world. The stillness of the image begins to work slowly on the mind. The silence deepens. Time seems to slow until each second feels suspended, stretched thin across the surface like breath held just beneath the throat. The viewer no longer feels like an observer standing before a painting, but like someone standing at the edge of themselves, watching something rise from a place they have avoided for too long. The unease arrives not through fear, but through recognition. The gaze feels familiar, like a presence we once knew and quietly abandoned. The painting reaches inward rather than outward. It does not ask what the figure is. It asks what part of us has returned. The face does not emerge to be seen. It emerges to remind. There is no narrative to anchor the moment, no story to explain the figure's existence. That absence becomes the atmosphere itself. The painting resists interpretation, forcing the viewer to sit with the uncertainty rather than escape it. Nothing moves, nothing progresses. The moment does not unfold, it remains. And in that stillness, the truth becomes impossible to avoid. Some part of the self never vanishes. It waits. The figure does not cross the boundary fully. It does not claim space above the world of water. It remains half-born, half-hidden, hovering in the fragile space between emergence and retreat. It suggests that there are parts of us that cannot survive entirely in the light, yet refuse to drown in the dark. They linger between worlds, aware, watching, patient. The cypress trees echo that same suspended state. They are trees of mourning, of remembrance, of quiet endurance through time. They have roots in the unseen earth beneath the water, yet their crowns rise upward toward darkness. They stand as reminders that memory does not decay. It transforms, it waits. The painting becomes a meditation on the self we bury, not out of hatred, not out of rejection, but out of necessity. The self we silence to function, the self we drown so that life may continue forward. Yet the water never keeps secrets. What is hidden does not disappear. It only waits for stillness. And in this moment, stillness has finally arrived. The eyes remain fixed, soft yet unyielding. They do not chase the viewer. They do not demand understanding. They ask only that we acknowledge what has risen. Not a ghost, not a threat, but a memory returning home. And as the silence deepens, the question begins to form, not in words, but in feeling, a question that lingers long after the image settles in the mind. What part of you has been waiting beneath the surface? The deeper the gaze sinks into the image, the more the figure in the water stops feeling like an intruder and begins to feel like something intimately connected to the self. The face does not challenge or confront. It waits with the patience of something that has been silent for a very long time and has finally found a way to return. The eyes seem to carry the weight of everything that was never spoken, everything that was set aside and pushed below the surface so that life above could continue uninterrupted. It is not the darkness that unsettles. It is the realization that the darkness knows us. The water becomes a boundary, but also a mirror. It reflects not only the visible face, but the weakness of memory, the way time distorts what we remember, softens some edges, blurs others, and yet never removes what truly matters. The reflection wavers, fragile and incomplete, like the version of ourselves we allow the world to see. The other self, the one submerged, remains whole, untouched, preserved in silence. The painting does not ask whether the figure is rising or sinking. It refuses to answer. The moment exists in both directions at once. Ascent and descent layered atop each other, inseparable. Perhaps the figure is returning from depths we have not dared to revisit. Perhaps it is slowly dissolving back into them. The truth exists in the tension between the two, in that thin sliver of existence where identity wavers and refuses to declare itself. The cypress trees behind the figure stand as reminders of time, watching without reaction. They are guardians not of the living world, but of memory, those silent monuments that remain after voices fade, after stories break apart and scatter. They are not mournful, but they are not indifferent. They simply remain, and in their stillness, the viewer senses the presence of something that stretches far beyond the span of a single life. The painting becomes a quiet confrontation with the parts of the self that do not age, the emotional echoes that remain exactly as they were the moment they were buried. The face in the water may be ancient or newly formed. It may belong to a child who never healed, a feeling never spoken, a grief that found no language, a version of the self abandoned along the way because survival demanded transformation. The gaze carries all of that without expression. It is not sorrowful. It is not joyful. It is simply aware, aware of the years that passed above, aware of the weight of silence, aware of the distance between who we became and who we once were. It looks not outward for validation, but inward, into the one who stands before it, into the mind that recognizes what it sees, even if it cannot name it. The longer one remains in its presence, the more the painting reveals its most unsettling realization, that nothing disappears inside us simply because we refuse to look at it. The depths of the mind are not empty, they are inhabited. And every so often, when the noise of the world grows quiet enough, something rises to the surface to remind us that we are not finished with ourselves. The figure does not break the surface fully because the truth never arrives completely. It returns in fragments, in echoes, in faces that look almost familiar and yet slightly distant. The self beneath the water is both us and not us, both past and present, both what we have lost and what we have never been able to let go. And so the painting remains suspended in that fragile, haunted equilibrium, neither confession nor revelation, neither dream nor memory, a threshold that refuses to close. When the viewer finally steps away, the darkness does not fade. Instead, it follows quietly, like the echo of a thought that will not dissolve. The eyes linger somewhere in the mind, patient and unhurried, as if they have returned not for explanation, but simply to be acknowledged. The image leaves no answers. It offers no resolution. It simply reminds us that somewhere inside, beneath the shifting layers of time and identity, there is a part of us that never stopped watching, waiting in silence, just below the surface, ready to rise whenever the world becomes quiet enough to hear it.